It's September the 15th, 2020. Time is now 5:34. And to our community, the Board of Education says welcome. We also say we are keeping this entire community in our prayers and our thoughts. We recognize that the work that has to be done in the city, some of it happens at 131 West Broad Street, but most of it happens in the buildings and the homes throughout the city. And I should mention, a lot of good work, hard work is happening in the streets. And we acknowledge the work of everybody, moms and dads, aunts and uncles who are in the streets or maybe can't make it into the streets and are doing what they can to raise families and raise communities in the right way. So we always, at the beginning of our board meetings, we try to think about other folks and their struggles to improve their own lives and the lives of others. And I know I say this with a great degree of confidence, every one of my colleagues, everybody that I know of in this district has total prayers and thoughts behind you doing whatever you need to do to make this community better. So we thank you for that. And we're honored as a board to be a part of that improvement. So without further ado, we got to talk about some stuff in executive session that involves appointments of particular persons to positions. The law allows us, when you have to have those confidential conversations, that you have them in private. We call that executive session. So I need a motion from one to go into. Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Is there a second?
Second, Willa.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of going to executive session to discuss the appointment of a particular person or persons, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Seems like the ayes have it, Madam Clerk. So, ladies and gentlemen, people of Rochester, we're going to go into executive session, have this conversation. We will most certainly come out of executive session and conduct the balance of our discussions in public. So, Tom, if you could click the right button so that we can have a private conversation, that'd be appreciated. again, the date hasn't changed. It is still September the 15th, 2020. Time has changed. It's 5:42. We were in executive session to discuss some matters that by law we had to discuss, or we were entitled to discuss privately. Haven't made any decision on those matters, those appointments that I referred to, but in due course, we probably will have some public conversation about that. But for now, we have an agenda that includes listen to some folks about things they have to say about the district. For folks that don't know, we allot at the beginning of every meeting opportunity for people to speak and or submit written documents about the district. And I think we have one speaker. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
We have two speakers.
Two. Okay.
Claire Washington and Ms. Kristen French.
All right, we can go ahead and introduce them and we'll get started.
Okay, Ms. Washington, you are first. You have 2 minutes to speak. When you're ready, you can turn your camera on and you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Just stepping outside for a second. Okay, I'm ready. So I spoke to the superintendent and to the board on the 27th regarding my 10-year-old daughter, Jayla Morrison, that attends 28 school right now, and she attended in person in the ASD program. She's partially nonverbal and was having a hard time with the 30-minute sessions, and now she's online almost all day up until 3 p.m. When the sessions start, I'm consistently engaging Jayla and giving her the answers to the majority of what is requested from her via Zoom. I feel like an unpaid and untrained TA, teacher's assistant. Online and Zoom is not working for my daughter. It's actually hurting her. These past 2 days have been exhausting for her and myself, but I'm extremely proud of her that she pushed through. She desperately needs in-person instruction and in-person interaction with her peers. I've called over Rochester seeking rec centers and organizations to help my daughter in person, but they can't accommodate because she has special needs. Everything that's out there basically has that is accommodating children, typical children. And decision that was made for my daughter and other children with special needs to have 100% learning is basically going against her IEP regarding how she learns. And again, why wasn't the 40% accommodated with in-person learning, particularly the special education? Teachers should have been considered essential workers, especially the special education teachers. I'm pleading with the superintendent and the board, if they will not allow in-person learning in school at this time, would you please consider partnering with local agencies, local rec centers, and utilize the TAs and the paraprofessionals that have already been trained to assist with with our special children. Please consider my request. And I would also like to speak with someone from the board offline. Last time I asked to speak to someone, her principal contacted me. So I would like to speak to somebody from the board. And also, would you be able to fund a special field trip or have some discounted tickets for like Stokey Farms or something like that for the parents and caregivers for their children to get out and have fresh air? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Our next speaker is Ms. Kristen French. Kristen, you have 2 minutes and you can unmute your.
Oh, sorry. All right, I'm ready to go. Our RCSD community has the impression that the social emotional learning will be a priority in our instruction based on district-wide schedules and the SEL toolkit. The 1-hour PD on the superintendent's day addressing the 32-page SEL document gave staff a quick glimpse at what the vision is for developing a deeper connection with students and families. This document lists claims of prioritizing the health and emotional well-being of students and staff with topics to consider such as prejudice, anxiety, and resilience. With an extensive overlapping trauma in our district due to hundreds of staff cuts and displacements, the reorganization of students due to closed schools and eliminated programs, the increased demands in the remote learning, the cutting of primary project staff, and the public health crisis of COVID and racism, our RCSD community is in need of deliberate, continual social emotional support beyond the typical zones of regulation or the the yoga courses offered to staff. This is a heavy load for a building-based social worker or psychologist to carry, or the classroom teacher to do alone. Educators need a group of highly trained staff solely dedicated to offering support in areas such as virtual restorative circle trainings for educators and students, teaching tolerance, anti-racism, restorative practices, and culturally responsive instruction, scheduled self-care and trauma-based check-ins, restorative symposiums, webinars, and programs that empower students' voices in culturally rich pedagogy done in the past with the Girls of Color Symposium and My Brother's Keeper program. There are professionals within our own district that can implement this much needed direct support using the Safe and Supportive School Grant, perhaps. Based on information available in the SEL document, it appears that there may be planned workshops and lessons coming soon for educators to access. Until then, I urge our district leaders to allow for some autonomy for staff who are working directly with students as they implement the strategies to cultivate community and connection with the needs of their students. The words and faces of students, staff, and families revealed a mix of exhaustion, anxiety, joy, and comfort with one commonality that was being illuminated. We all deeply care about our children and want to do what is best for them. One sentence left. My ask is to make sure the SEL toolkit is action-based and not merely a document. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. French. Just want to let everyone know that you can sign up to speak by reaching out to us by emailing boardofelucation@rcsdk12.org, or you can also submit your comments and the board members will be receiving those, and they're posted to the website as well. Thank you to our speakers today.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Next item on our agenda, it's not actually reflected on there, but the superintendent asked for an opportunity to discuss the first day of school, and certainly.
Mr. President, before we move from the speakers, I have a point of a question on our bylaws.
Sure.
Under the, I mean, I haven't opened them since hearing the speakers, but I thought that we allowed 3 minutes for speakers up until we reached 20, at which time it would go over an hour and would reduce it to 2 minutes. Yet for some time now, probably since we went virtual, that we've been telling the speakers they only have 2 minutes. Can you shed some light on that for me?
I think when we went into the COVID stage and went digital via Zoom, we went to the 2-minute platform. But I think you're right. And I thought there was a resolution or a motion to do that, but apparently not.
There was. It was voted on when we moved to a virtual platform. The board voted to change the bylaws to allow for 2-minute speech while we were using Zoom.
I thought that was the case. Ms. Powell, Commissioner Powell, would you like at some future time to ask the board to look at that issue?
I do think we need to reconsider it for 2 reasons. Our speakers lists are not overly long just now. You know, we seem to have a kind of a control over it. And the second issue is that I don't think we ever anticipated we'd be for as many months as we have. And I think we could bring a kind of normalcy to it by resuming our previous bylaws. But it's just one person's opinion.
I think that's a fair opinion. What I would ask is that our colleagues think about that between now and the next meeting, let's say Thursday. And it would require, since it's changing the bylaws, it would require a 2/3 vote. So I don't think people need to deliberate on it a lot tonight, and probably not even Thursday, but let's take it up on Thursday. Carl, we would be allowed to do that, right? So long as there's a 2/3 vote?
Yes, it would be.
So why don't we take that up on Thursday? I think you make some good points, Commissioner Powell, certainly worthy of people discussing it on Thursday night and if necessary, changing it, because it looks like this may be the new normal for a while. And you are point spot on when you say in this environment, there's more control over whether to allow a person to continue to speak or not. As you know, when we're on the third floor, and this goes back to prior to my presidency, people could talk on and on and on, and you struggle with how to cut them off. There's a way to do that here with 3 minutes. So if there ever was a time to have a 3-minute period, this technology allows us to do that. So let's take that up Thursday. And thank you, Commissioner Powell. Superintendent Leslie Myers-Small, you want to give us an update on how the first day of school went? I changed this portion of the agenda at the request of the superintendent. It makes a lot of sense to have her describe for us what happened in the first day of school. Leslie?
Sure, thank you, President White, and good evening to our Board of Education commissioners, to our staff, and those who are watching on Facebook or YouTube. Good evening. Very excited to just give a brief update on our first day of school in Rochester. Either Marisol or Kalia, would you just do me a favor and put up the first document so the board, our commissioners can see, but also our viewers. We had a really good first day, I think, relatively speaking, that it was certainly remote and different from what we're accustomed to ever that's happened in the Rochester City School District. So the first thing I just want to address is our parent resource guide, and it's a 1-pager. So we took our multi-paged reopening plan and really narrowed it down to a front and back page. This is both in English and in Spanish, but just want to high level go over what the document just talked about. The first day, that was Monday, September 14th. We wanted to make sure that parents and caregivers and students were aware of that, as well as our community. It just gives an overview of what the school day will look like. We talk about logging in. We define what synchronous and asynchronous entails. We talk about how much time that our students will spend on screen, because there is research out there about making sure that there's not online fatigue in our students, if you'll just scroll down. It talks about the remote learning platforms and models. So we have Seesaw, which I had an opportunity to see in action yesterday when I was at the R Centers with Dr. Morris and Melody, Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis. We're using Google Classroom as well as e-learning. We talk about attendance, expectations, and we go over our website. If you'll just scroll down to the next page, we give just a brief outline of what the respective stakeholders are, expectations are for students, for teachers, and for families. We also outline our meal sites, and we talk about a new function in Power School, which we're really excited about, that gives real-time information and access to our parents and caregivers as far as schedules, attendance, assignments, etc. So that's really important, and that's a nice shift that we have. And we do, when I spoke with our Chief of Information Management and Technology, Glenn Vanderwater, roughly over 85% of our students have picked up a Chromebook. But if we have families that still are in need, please make sure that you contact your child's home school, and we'll get one out to you. And I just have to say that our technology department has been Herculean in their efforts. They have personally been dropping off devices, whether it's Chromebooks or MiFi devices. It has been very customer service friendly. So if there are any students who still are in need of either a Chromebook, a MiFi device, or both, please make sure you reach out to us and let us know at your child's home school. And we will make sure that we get that to you. I just want to reiterate, because there's a little bit still of misinformation out there when we have some calls that are coming in. It is not one Chromebook per family, it's one Chromebook per student. So if you have one child, if you have 6, or like my maternal grandmother, she had 10, you will get 10 Chromebooks for your family. So just if you can take that down. That is available on our website. You can take it down. And yesterday, when Deputy Superintendents Morris and Martinez Davis and I we were able to get to 6 of the 9 R centers. We actually dropped these documents off, these parent information guides. We dropped them off, hard copies, just in case there was an access information. Just as a reminder, there are 9 R centers in operation across the district between 8 and 12. It's remote school assignment and instruction assistance and login help. We certainly will follow up with the parent who spoke with us today to see if there's any additional in-person assistance that we can give through that venue. And then 12 through 7 is open and recreation. That's anywhere from arts and crafts to like a PE type of active activity. And in some of the centers, we received tours, so we had a chance to go through and see. These R centers really are a great partnership for the Rochester City School District, given our remote instruction model as of right now. Also at the R Center, students, when they're there, they can get breakfast, lunch, and dinner if needed. It's just going back to Chromebook distribution. As of yesterday or the day before, over 24,000 Chromebooks have been distributed and over 7,000 MiFi devices. So the department under Chief Vanderwater's leadership has just been incredible as far as getting those devices out to students and their families. I do want to thank the principals, our teachers, our SSOs, our clerical staff, food service, our assistant principals, our special education teachers, counselors, social workers, psychologists, every employee who works for the Rochester City School District. It was all hands on deck yesterday, and they worked incredibly hard to ensure that yesterday's first day, although remote, was positive, was supportive and encouraging. So on behalf of myself, and I'm sure the Board of Education, I just want to say thank you. And I did just a quick video message via Twitter and on Facebook to thank our staff. I did have the chance to see a couple of the Zoom rooms, and it was amazing what I saw. So thank you for supporting our students. I think it was a great first day. We're continuing to monitor and adjust. And one of the things that we have said and maintained is that this is a week of flexibility. This is a week of certainly tweaking things to make sure we get them just right. And so we're working hard to make sure that we're supporting our staff in every way that we possibly can. And just want to reiterate my thanks to our parents and caregivers for their flexibility. I want to thank the Board of Education for their support with us moving forward in this regard. But I would say overall, it was an incredibly positive first day, and we'll just continue to move forward and make it wonderful. I will say that when I was in the R centers, I did have a chance to talk to some of our TAs and our paras. I don't want to be remiss, and they were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And the care and attention and time that they took with our students was amazing. So thank you to our TAs and to our paras. So overall, I believe it was a good first day, and we'll just continue to move together forward now. So thank you, President White, for the time.
I also wanted to let Superintendent have an opportunity to describe the experience over at East. I apologize to him. He didn't have any time to prepare any PowerPoints, but I'm sure he can give us a nutshell version of how things went at East. Superintendent
Hey, thanks. Thank you, President White and School Board. Dr. Meyer Small, community. It's a really quick overview. So yes, I totally agree with Dr. Meyer Small. She had a wonderful video. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, welcoming everyone back. It was also her first day. So welcome to your first day, Dr. Meyer Small, your first day in Rochester. I will say that we also had a really impressive opening, and I want to thank the board for supporting the teacher leadership model at East. Because of that model, teachers entered the school year, I think, very prepared for teaching. They had a number of different Zoom tools and techniques and other apps they were using, and they got trained in over the 4 days of superintendent's conference days, also this summer. So I think they were very excited and prepared for what's to come. And I said to them, just be patient. You don't have to plan for all 10 weeks by day one. Take it a couple of days at a time and to learn and adjust. Our attendance for lower school was 91.5% on the first day. And in upper school, it was nearly 88%, something we were very proud of. The lower school attendance was actually about the same as last year. Little lower, was 92, I think, 92.5 last year. And upper school was higher, which is interesting. So we are starting to look at the data to see why are kids tuning in for all their classes in upper school now, because it's remote. The kids have to sign in, show their face to make sure they're there, so we know it's actually them. So that's been a really interesting discovery. I think our goal is to make sure that continues to increase and find out from students if this model is working for them and why. And I think it's going to have implications in the future. I also want to thank our music and arts department and the lower school. We had all but 3 students pick up their school supplies before Monday, which was incredible. 1 student was out of town and the other 2 had incorrect addresses. I think that's been resolved. But to know that students came in with their materials identified by their teachers and bagged and picked up. I saw schools all over the district doing that, handing out school supplies, and that was a great value add. As someone who had my son reminded me Sunday night of he needed 3 binders for Monday morning. I'm sure our parents appreciated having those materials ahead of time. I also want to thank Mr. Glenn Vanderwater and the IT team. We had a few tech issues and Zoom bombs the first day, and they jumped right on it and gave us feedback on how to block that. Kids are very creative, I told staff. They're always gonna be one step ahead of us with technology. But we figured out a workaround, and I'm sure those things will happen. They're happening all over the county and they're happening all over the country with kids breaking the Zooms. But it only happened in about 4 classrooms. So I would say that's a pretty big success. And I just want to tell our parents, to continue to share with us using Let's Talk or through Facebook Messenger, or calling the school directly if you're having issues logging in. I think the biggest lesson learned for me as a parent and as an educator is sometimes there will be days when my kids are going to have work that lasts 5 hours in a day, and other days it may be 3 with some work. And adjusting to that, but as I told my son today, I say, when you go to college, you have 3 classes for an hour each, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you have maybe an hour and a half class on Tuesday and Thursday. So there's a lot of time in which you're going to have concentrated time for academics. You have to learn how to plan for some of that downtime. If you really think about K-12 schools, there's a lot of downtime, I think, with kids mentally. Think about hallway transitions, lunch, sometimes in class, you finish early, you're waiting there for a couple of minutes for colleagues and classmates to catch up. Kids are working very, very hard in concentrated times. I think there's also some lessons learned that kids, when they're focused on things that are meaningful, that they are more efficient and more effective. And I'm questioning how much downtime there actually exists in K-12 schools in a normal setting. So there's a lot of things we're looking at and discovering. But thank you again to our staff and to the board for supporting this model. I think we're off to a great start.
Thank you, Superintendent Nelms. Again, on behalf of the board and reiterating some of the stuff that both what Sean and Leslie said, thank you to our community. As everybody knows, we are undergoing significant health, economic, and political challenges. And despite those challenges, our community has risen to the challenge of providing for the education of our children and simultaneously trying to improve the community otherwise. So we should, as Sean and Leslie said, call out the IT department that has made that duality possible. We should also, of course, as both of our superintendents have done, the board would also recognize and send sincere appreciation to our staff that has made this effort possible. Importantly, to our parents and our community members who are making this happen despite, again, those economic, health-related, and political challenges that we face as a community. We cannot do this work without our parents and our students. So and again, on behalf of the board, thank you for making this first day happen and every day after that. All right, we have some stuff to consider on our agenda. And one of the things that is new today that we're going to consider is what we're calling our monthly claims audit report. And I'm going to let our Auditor General have the privilege of introducing this relatively newer segment of our agenda. Anissa?
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight we have the leadership team from Nairaki Smith, our recently appointed claims auditors. The board on July 1st appointed them as the claims audit function for the district. And included in our RFP process, we identified that they would be producing monthly reports to the Board of Education on the claims audit processing. For those who may not be aware, their responsibility is specifically to evaluate every claim brought against the district prior to payment to ensure that it is appropriate claim that is properly supported for an appropriate business purpose. And so the team has been started since the 1st. And, the transition, surprisingly, I was talking with management, has been somewhat seamless. I mean, it's been very, very smooth, which has been wonderful. I'm going to ask the Nairaki team to actually turn on your cameras right now so that we can see who you are. We have Darren, Demetrius, and I believe Richard's out there somewhere, but I don't see him on the screen. Is he not with us tonight? Oh, there you are, Richard. Everything's moving around. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn over to Nairaki so that they can speak to their report, which Kalia has available to put on the screen. And I just want the board to recognize after they finish their presentation, there is one decision the board does need to make this evening, which is specifically, is your desire that they formally present every month, or would you like for them to send the report every month and actually present on a different frequency? So once you have the opportunity to walk through this particular presentation with Nairaki, that'll be the one question I do want to get clarity on from the board, because I am making an actual schedule. So we'll be very clear as to what the date of receipt for the monthly reports would be, and to bring greater clarity as to how this process will work. Darren?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Darren Akabelli. I'm one of the partners at Nairaki Smith, and we have with you tonight our management team for this client, Dimitri Bantaleskis and Rich Vituli. We have other team members that assist in the day-to-day operations in terms of reviewing the claims against the district to be paid. Rich, who you have with us tonight, he's the main point of contact for that team internally, as well as for the district. So Rich is communicating with the district on a day-to-day basis. But thank you for the appointment and trusting us to carry out this function. It's a very important audit function on behalf of the district, and on behalf of the board members, I should say. So we did start as of July 1st, and we spent some time in June getting up to speed and getting our arms around your systems. Through the month of July, we had an opportunity to really speak with a lot of your accounts payable folks, and into August as well, to get used to working with each other. We have daily emails. There's a distribution list of how we communicate. It's quite seamless. Responses that we have, the questions we have are responded to quite timely from your staff. And one of the outgrowths that was really nice on our end is we have a report we've issued to all our clients in this regard, typically definitely on a monthly basis. But we had an opportunity to get some feedback from Anissa and other members of your team, and we're able to improve the presentation of our report. So we'll probably roll it out to some of our other clients. So thank you as well. What we're going to do is really bring you through the highlights of the report. It's a great summary. You just know that there's a back end to this report of a huge schedule that we track everything we're doing, and when we have items that we call observations or inquiries, we're communicating with your accounts payable team to make sure we work towards getting resolutions with them as the month goes on, and even at the conclusion of each month. So you'll see some of this data in the report. So we have it on the screen. Rich, you want to walk through the report? It's 2 pages. If you have questions, interrupt us along the way, and so we can just have some dialogue and answer your questions.
Sure. So just to go over our role at the district, we are doing a 100% audit of every claim against the district. That includes verifying that invoices are accurate, verifying that invoices are properly approved by department heads, as well as there's established POs, comparisons to contracts that the board has with its vendors, as well as verifying that everything has been entered into the various systems correct. And if not, we're communicating that, as Darren just implied, with the staff on a daily basis, as well as ensuring that we're in compliance with all laws and regulations of procurement. So this is our summary in regards to our work for the month of July. In total, we broke it down by system between PeopleSoft, Concur invoices, Concur expenses, as well as your procurement cards. And we have audited 1,789 transactions against the district. And that is totaling $35.9 million. All right. We have made inquiries or observations into 429 total, and that's $2.2 million. And then we have a couple of outstanding inquiries totaling 74 and totaling $56,000 approximately, and that's only 0.16% of your total claims for this audit period. All right, and then moving to the next page, if possible.
Can I ask a question about the previous slide, or you guys prefer we ask at the end of the presentation?
Sure.
You
can ask.
I don't know who can you go back to this screen here? So I just have a couple of questions about what this information here. So there are 74 outstanding inquiries totaling 56, roughly a little over 56 million.
56,000.
56,000, okay. So thank you for that clarification, because I was like, who is spending millions on P cards here? So, which brings up the next point, 64 of those out of the 74 are directly related to P cards. Do you have an idea of what's being purchased with these P cards in the totality for the P cards? Separate from, and then just for clarification, Concur invoices and expenses are travel. Is that, because I remember Concur as our travel kind of organization that we use. Is that correct?
So Concur invoices is kind of your everyday stuff as well. It would be non-PO payments. It's not necessarily only pertaining to travel.
Okay.
And the Concur expense side, so in addition to being a utility for your employees to schedule and track travel and upload documents, it also just does the mileage as well for within the district for anyone who travels from building to building. So that would be at this point, since there is minimal travel outside the district, if any, that would be what's going on right now.
Okay, and then But the totality of this 56,000 then is really.
So on the next page, on the next page, we have a breakdown of that and how that is. So
Before we move on to that next page, may I also ask a question?
sure.
On your first page, can you, two questions. Can you give us an number of inquiries and the amount of time it takes to resolve them? Is this typical of a district that you are just building a relationship with, and or is it typical of other districts in general? That's my first question.
Okay. So to answer your question, it's definitely typical of a district that we are starting a relationship with, and also a district of your size. Volume of your transactions is quite large, and also our expectancy is that working with us, that there'll be a level of improvement in regards to the number of inquiries that we are making from month to month.
Understood. My second question is, this is the July month-end report. Will you typically need more than a month to close out and report back to us? Or in the future, can we expect by mid-September to see the August month-end?
Yes, so our anticipation is that once we lock down a report that is, and a process that is working with both the district as well as our firm and the board schedule, the time to report to the board will be reduced.
Thank you.
Let me just interject right there. So management, financial management, myself and Iraqi, we met and we kind of went over the report for them to understand the content and potentially the expectations for both timely resolving the outstanding inquiries and to ensure when the board gets the next report, they're not getting a repeat of the prior month's reports, but that there's resolution to the outstanding items so that the board has that addressed and can rest assured that those things are happening. In this particular month, really the majority of these outstanding items really stemmed from the P-card environment. And there was a bit of challenge in that particular environment because there was a major transition. A very experienced employee left out of that shop, so you were down an individual. And the person who happened to have been doing some of the oversight of those items was not able to do some of the follow-up that she would have normally done as it related to these transactions. Actually, I'm working with Tim Schmant and under the direction of Carlene Pierce, our CFO. We talked about some of these concerns and the fact that we're coming to resolution to try to resolve the outstanding issues that are sitting as it relates to the P-cards that were not there. As we went through and as we were looking at the data, it came to non-compliance, but some of the non-compliance was not timely, managers not timely signing off on these reports. And then unfortunately, there's kind of an effect, whereas if the person who has a P-card does not submit timely, and then the manager does not review timely, then the P-card reviewer does not get to evaluate timely, which then causes NIRACI to not have completed documents. So we actually are planning and scheduling a meeting this week to really talk about, one, the cleanup, and two, the things that really need to happen now that the crunch period for the purchasing organization, where they've rebalanced what their workload and who has to do what, where we can address this issue and not see this kind of thing. I'm thinking, obviously, because right now we're sitting in early September, August might have a few of those similar challenges, but I would definitely expect you to see much less on the P-card side, especially considering there was a directive where they were eliminating the use of P-cards for most individuals. So it is something that we're not only aware of, but have a plan to resolve so that this is addressed from the board's perspective. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to mention, and there is going to be a schedule. So based upon what the board decides about how often you want NIRACI to meet, if it's monthly or otherwise, I will actually have a formal schedule, which I will identify the report date for the board to receive NIRACI's monthly reports. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so is there any more questions on the first page of the report? No. Okay, so the exhibit 1 is a summary of inquiries and resolutions. And it's gonna be hard to see with the screen right now, but all of the inquiries that we've made are categorized on the left side of the page, and then by system you can see the numbers and the totals as you go through. So I will just draw your attention to the P cards in particular. All the way at the right, resolution is that the documentation that was just explained was not available for our review because the expense report was not created yet, and that kind of trickled into the review process. So that is a large number of your inquiries that are still outstanding this month, and the goal is to kind of minimize the number of those outstanding going forward. And I will just draw your attention to the lower half of the page, as you pointed out, the total dollar amount of the outstanding inquiries. If you can see the lower half of the page, approximately 18,000 is P cards, and 30,000 would be from the PeopleSoft application.
It's also important to note that the number with the 64, it would be 64 transactions, not 64 individuals. So I want to make sure that that's clear. It could be 1 or 2 people with a bunch of transactions. And as it relates to the P card process and the transactional detail that comes across, since it is a credit card, the transactions can be seen. So there was no glaring items because that could clearly be seen if it was not an appropriate, say, vendor. Those types of things are seen clearly on this transaction detail that would be pulled in. They're just not able to sign off and evaluate to ensure the detailed receipts, the sign-offs, et cetera, so they cannot clear it. They're not going to clear it unless it's in order. It's not in order, but we can at least see what has transpired. So I just wanted to add that it was definitely transactions, and it doesn't mean 64 people. It means 64 transactions. Thank you.
So we share with your management team the detail of these transactions as our worksheet. So we have a working relationship with them, so they get a chance to review it and to come back to us and say they agree or disagree, or here's the scenario. So we get to hash out, the detail behind all these numbers that you're seeing right now. It has all the detail of the vouchers. So it has vendor names, sometimes, individual names attached to it, depending on the transaction itself. So it's really just our worksheet that we use as a working document, with the management team over at Rochester. So it's pretty fluid in terms of completely transparent of what our audit process revealed. And then we await their response as we finalize the report. So even those steps are going to be delineated within the calendar that Anissa is putting together. So we're going to have a nice process in working with you so we can deliver the report on time, and of course give your management team enough time to respond to our observations within the worksheet. So we find that this format is a real useful tool for for management of our clients, seeing that detail, and then also managing to expectations and a number. So people will like to see trends go down in certain audit criterias, or stay flat, right? So if we see that there's no sales tax, we don't identify sales tax being paid, for 6 months in a row, that means your team is doing a great job and is staying on top of things. If we catch 1 or 2, there's human error involved in that, which is an acceptable rate. If we see 25, then we've got a training issue and something that we need to, talk further about. So each one of these line items has a valid purpose for being there from an audit perspective, but also from a tracking and trending perspective and a training perspective with your team if it ever comes to that.
So the outstanding item from this presentation, I hope this was informative for the board. What I just want to verify is it the board's desire? We've already written into the RFP the expectation for monthly reporting. We definitely will expect it to be less than 30 days time before the board would get it, even within the process that I'm establishing. But I just want to clarify, does the board desire that NIRACI comes and has in person for the monthly reports, or would they like them sent and have some other frequency in which they show up in person?
Anybody want to be heard on that question? What do you recommend, Anissa?
I think it's important to have kind of that face-to-face opportunity. It may not have to be every month. I think it depends upon what the board really desires and what's on their plate. But I would leave the caveat that if there's anything of concern, it is the responsibility of NIRACI to have full access to the board as to be able to come and jump in any meeting at any point in time if there is an urgent issue that arises that they need to bring to your attention. So that is a caveat regardless of what schedule you establish, because if there is a problem, they are working on a daily basis for weekly check runs. So if they come down to a problem and they're uncomfortable with something, or if there's something of concern, they need to be able to get to you as needed. And the great thing is the board does meet on a weekly basis. But if your desire is a couple times a year, 4 times a year, once a year, whatever it is, I'm kind of flexible on that as long as they have that open door available to them.
Aaron, what has worked best with your other clients?
Yeah, I can tell you there are some clients that we do meet with monthly, and it is a bit of overkill, especially as we get to know each other over the long run. In this scenario, I would suggest we meet with you for our next report, and then maybe even the next one after that, so we kind of build that traction. You can see how the report is developed. Falling into a quarterly or twice a year reporting would make sense thereafter. So we just maintain this face-to-face, contact as it is now. But I would suggest the next report, we definitely meet with you, and then we move to a quarterly or twice a year model, knowing that we have access to you when we need to, and if you need us, we'll be available as well.
Hearing Darren's suggestions, anybody opposed to at least playing this out for the next?
Some of us have our hand raised and we're waiting for you.
I'm looking at the screen and I don't see the hands being raised. So go ahead, Commissioner LeBron. I don't see it.
Commissioner Powell had her hand up first. I was second. Commissioner Malloy was third.
For some reason, it's not showing on my screen and I'm looking at it now, but go ahead.
I'll yield to Commissioner LeBron because she was physically waving her hand before I hit the hand up button.
Okay, thank you. So actually, before you guys gave your recommendation, I was going to, for myself, request a monthly report. I definitely want to be able to see what's happening and keep an eye on that critical piece, because you guys do play an important part in us stabilizing our finances as well and understanding financially where we're at. So for me, a monthly report, and then for in-person, for me, I keep saying for me because it's just my own opinion on what I would prefer, is every 60 days having the opportunity to meet with you guys about anything that comes up. But I also like the recommendation you just gave for the next 3 in person, and then seeing from there whether we could move to a twice a year. But whether you guys come in every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, I still would like the board as a whole to have a monthly report on what's happening.
Okay,
absolutely, monthly report will be issued. That's without question. You'll get a hard copy report from us like this every single month.
So I've got my screen working again, and I see Commissioner Powell and then Commissioner Malloy.
Yeah, I would just say that I'm delighted to hear your recommendation. It's what I would have sought after had you not recommended it. There is that sort of breaking in period where we want to get a sense from you how responsive the administrative community is to your guidance, if you will, and then ultimately when we get down to say a quarterly schedule, I think that the thing that we would benefit most from your time is hearing where we need to focus some job training efforts, and retraining. How many people need to be retrained because they're just not getting it or whatever, so that they don't continue to be a jam in the pipeline. I think Anissa has her hand up as well.
Wait till Commissioner Malloy had an opportunity to speak before I had joined into that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really echo just the sentiments of both Commissioner LeBron and Commissioner Powell. Feeling really confident in what I've seen so far and just the thorough nature of your reporting. So thank you so much. I feel so much more confident now. But yeah, I was going to recommend written monthly reports, and then after that, a quarterly basis. So, I defer to your recommendation.
Okay, the only thing I would like to add is not only are they speaking with management on a daily basis, I am always available ad hoc and as they are asking questions or the one thing that is included in the financial management report with NIROCI for this to be a value-added process is we're looking at the recurring issues. We're seeing that. So as we see the preview of the report, it is our responsibility to identify the action plans necessary to improve what this report looks like. So hopefully as it gets to the board, you're going to see that management is establishing and identifying the things that need to change, such as training issues or recurring things that are there. So that's one of the reasons why within the reporting process we're documenting, they're stepping up too, saying, hey, wait a minute, I saw this too many times. What do we need to do as a management team? I'm talking about the finance organization to address the issues that are seen. So I think that what you're looking for as a board to improve our internal control process is built into the process that we're establishing. So I just wanted to share that.
Any other questions or comments? Looking at my screen here, I don't see any. Let me see if I can summarize. You all will always issue a monthly written report. That's going to happen as long as we're in a contractual relationship. You will always do that.
Absolutely.
In addition, I think there's been a recommendation from you all that at least for the first few months, you will make a oral presentation. You'll meet with us face to face in this format, in this setting, to present the report. And then 2 meetings or 3 meetings in, we'll all have a conversation about the frequency at which we think additional face-to-faces are necessary throughout the course of the year. Is that a fair summary of where we're at, everybody? Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Let me make sure I'm scrolling up and down my screen. Don't see any. So let me say on behalf of the board, thank you very much. I feel very, very, and I know my colleagues do too, very comfortable about this relationship. It has just begun, and that's a very good sign. I want to thank you, both you gentlemen, for coming in today. Thank Anissa on behalf of the board. I already feel that we are in a very different place, and it feels good. And we had good staff before. That's not a knock on them. But thank you for coming tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. And yeah, we're off to a great start. And just thanks for putting the trust in our firm. And we'll see you at the next meeting. Thanks for.
Sounds good. Be safe.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Again, thanks, Anissa. We really do appreciate the work that you put into this. It took a while to get here, but we're here, and it feels like we're in a good place. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda are resolutions for consideration. There's not a lot, so I think we can move through this pretty quickly because we still have a very full Finance Committee agenda. So why don't we begin with a motion to advance for discussion Resolution 289.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second? Somebody help me here.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. This is a civil service motion. Any questions or comments regarding that particular resolution 289? I just want to tell you, I'm looking at the screen, but how mine is set up, maybe I should set up it only shows so many faces. So if you happen to be waving your hand, I might not see you because it only shows 3 or 4 faces. But if for some reason I don't catch you, I don't see you, feel free to just say, hey, Van, and I'll make sure you get a chance to have the floor. All right, there are no questions or comments regarding resolution 289, so let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of resolution 289 indicate by making sure your camera is on and by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Seems that the ayes have it. And Madam Clerk, of course, you know, if the visuals aren't right for you, you don't get your vote, you'll just interrupt and let me know. Okay.
Yes.
All right, I need a motion, so long as there's no objection to it, to merge the resolutions 291 and 292. These are resolutions that relate to resignations. Is there a motion to advance for discussion resolutions 291
Motion.
and 292? I think I heard Commissioner LeBron. And is there a second?
Second.
Oh, that's Commissioner Malloy. Thank you both. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 291 and 292? Don't see any. So it looks like we're in a position to vote. All those in favor of resolution 291 and 292 indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seems that the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, that passes. I next need a motion to discuss, looks like an amendment to unpaid leave. That's resolution 296. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I heard a simultaneous motion made by Commissioner LeBron and Commissioner Malloy. Madam Clerk, you decide who made the motion, who seconded it. It is now before the board. All those in favor, oh, I'm sorry, any questions or comments regarding resolution 296? Looks like we're good to go here too. All those in favor of resolution 296 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes seem to have it. Next, it looks like we have 2 resolutions related to the Center for Youth Services at number 19 school and Douglas. They are designated as resolutions 303 and 304. Can I get a motion just to advance those 2 resolutions for a discussion? I heard Commissioner LeBron. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 303 and 304? I see Commissioner Malloy raising her hand. Yep.
So I just want some clarification on how these services are being provided during this remote period. I'm wondering which adjustments or what adjustments have been made given our current remote situation.
Are you okay with me taking it from here, President White?
Oh, I always, whenever
Okay.
board puts a question to the
Sure. I was waiting to be recognized. I wasn't sure. Okay.
No, you're good. It was to you, so you got it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis come on, but that's a great question, Commissioner Malloy, and actually glad that you asked that. Deputy Martinez Davis will go into detail, but we have shifted our process because we're in an all remote environment, that before a contract comes through to the board through resolution, we are doing just that. So I'll let Deputy Martinez Davis, Deputy Superintendent, address that.
Thank you, Superintendent Myers, and good evening, President White, and good evening to all the commissioners. Dr. Jallo and I had the opportunity to actually meet in person with the Center for Youth coordinators and some of our Center for Youth building coordinators. We truly were, I'm going to say, blown away by the amount of resources and opportunities that they offer our students and the data that they collect. They have managed to continue to provide the services virtually. And I do want to say that given the circumstances that our city and our students are witnessing right now, what they're participating in, having the Center for Youth as a partner in our buildings, assisting with social and emotional learning, even though it's virtual, it's imperative. They are ready to do virtual circles. They are ready and have already started to plan to do social emotional learning training for their staff. They have virtual, the 15-minute check-in. They will be scheduling so that they can go to the classrooms, co-teach with our teachers too during those 15 minutes of social emotional learning. They are doing home visits. They have a program to re-engage students that will perhaps not engage as quickly as we would like our students to engage in the remote learning, just to mention a few of the areas that they are going to be assisting us this year. Again, I have to reiterate that given what many of our students are experiencing and are being part of changing history, we truly need to ensure that we are supporting their social emotional learning with any and every resource that is available to us.
Thank you very much.
You all set, Commissioner Malloy?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding resolutions 304 and 305? Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, for that response.
Yes.
Doesn't seem that there are any further questions or comments, so let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolutions 304 and 305, I'm sorry, 303 and 304. I'm sorry, 303 and 304. Indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seems like the ayes have it. Superintendent Myers-Small. Finally, we have resolution 305. Is there a motion to advance for a conversation or discussion? Resolution 305, which relates to the Chief Academic Officer.
Motion.
Loy has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we can stay here all night and wait for a second. Y'all want to.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. All right, so that resolution is properly before the board. 305, anybody have any questions or comments for our superintendent about that resolution? Commissioner Malloy, is that an old hand?
No, that's a current hand.
Oh, okay, all right. Go ahead.
All right. So obviously this is for our Chief Academic Officer. And I'm concerned given the financial climate in the district and just everything that's been happening and potential 20% in cuts. I'm just concerned about the optics of adding this type of position to the district. Although I recognize as an educator, the value and the need for this type of position. So I'm wondering if perhaps we can explain publicly where the funds are coming from to pay for this. If this was already set aside in our budget, can you just explain a little bit more for transparency purposes?
Absolutely. I'll Deputy Superintendent Dr. Morris.
Thank you.
Lead you through that.
Good evening, everyone. So in the budget that was adopted last year, June 4th, the role and the title of Chief Academic Officer was identified and was budgeted for this current school year. The Chief Academic Officer will manage the subject area development and implementation across the curriculum for all of our students in our school district. And as your question was, where was the funds identified? And the identified funds were from the budget that was enacted by the board as of June.
It was my understanding that the funds that were approved we had fewer funds available at that time. So the difference in cost, where are those funds coming from?
So the difference in cost, which is $10,000, comes from the school improvement grant, which is a federal grant, which is dispersed to states, to districts that are in need of improvement. The role of Chief Academic Officer in our district will be in part dedicated to serving the role of serving the DSIP, which is our district academic plan. And so in that regard, we are allocating $10,000 from that grant to the service of the district's initiatives through the DSIP grant and that's why it's allocated for DSEP.
Dr. Morris.
I see Commissioner LeBron raising her hand.
Yeah, so I just want to state for the record, I will not be supporting this or voting for it. This is nothing against the administration, so I want to be fully transparent with the community as well. When this position was created by the previous superintendent and his administration team, I opposed it then as well, primarily because of some of the previous decisions that were made, even around how the administration was shuffling titles and individuals around, and the workload just did not support it. But I do want to point out that the budget has a deficit. And so when we say that there was a budgeted amount for this particular title in the budget, I have no way at this time to indicate whether that money actually exists there or not, and what the implications will be moving forward, as we are going to be cutting 20% because we have been cut 20%. So I will not be supporting this tonight, but I just want to be very transparent with the community that it is nothing to Dr. Myers-Small, or her team at all. It's just where I stand right now in principle.
Oops. Commissioner Powell, and then Commissioner Malloy.
Yeah, this seems like the right place to add new information. As you know, I serve on the New York State School Board Association Board of Directors, and we had a quarterly directors meeting on Saturday, and one of our guests was former Chancellor Rosa, now Commissioner of Education Rosa, and she heard all of the concerns of board members across the entire state around this 20%, be a fatal blow for many school districts. And she was unable to go into detail because it's still under negotiation, I guess, with the governor, but she indicated that there may be some real movement on this whole 20% issue. I suspect, and this is where I'm going to diverge from new information and speculate, but while the state is going to be facing a revenue shortfall this year, that isn't to say they don't have money. They have resources from previous years. There is a federal loan program they have access to. And so when Commissioner Rosa says that there's some movement on this issue, I believe her. And because from a financial perspective, I'm aware that there's more to New York State finances than its current year revenue and expenses. So I'm personally not worried about one position. It was funded in our approved budget, and just from the standpoint of keeping faith with the superintendent, she should be allowed to fill positions that have been properly budgeted for. Thank you.
Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you. Yeah, I find myself feeling extremely divided on this resolution for a number of reasons. We're about to lay off a number of people, or have laid off a number of people in some of our other bargaining units. And I guess as an educator, I need to know how this fits into our district's long-term academic plan. So if someone could maybe touch on that for me. Can we delay this position by chance until we have more funding? I really want to see how it fits in with our overall academic plan for the district.
Go ahead, Dr. Morris.
So, as I mentioned before, the academic officer, their role is really to manage and support the academic plan of the district. And as we mentioned before, there are several things that go along with that, including the district comprehensive improvement plan and the movement forward of the district, which are going to be covered in the elements of the strategic plan. The strategic plan has 4 major focus, and there are several goals that will come out from the strategic plan, including but not limited to increases in student proficiency. You have increases in graduation rate. You have increased performance in all of the areas that lead towards our students having successful outcomes. And as of right now, we needed somebody who will lead the charge forward to carry out the academic components of the strategic plan. As we mentioned in the strategic plan work that you've heard already from the superintendent has already discussed the areas that are really of the focus of the organization. And as we've mentioned before, there are several areas that we want to show marked improvement in. These are areas that are covered under the purview of a chief academic officer. So we need oversight in the areas of science, in the areas of library and media science, visual and performing arts, athletics, CTE and different career pathways, English language arts, early childhood education, and social studies and community service learning. And all of these areas would fall directly under the immediate oversight of the chief academic officer. By having someone with the skill set and the knowledge and the skills and expertise that this chief academic officer will bring to this role, that will help us really meet the needs of the district in moving forward to achieving the strategic plan goals. And academically, there's a huge weight that is laid on the teaching and learning side of the district, where there are several measurable objectives that we've discussed. I believe we have 18 charts that demonstrate the targets that we have for the district in terms of meeting our objectives. And we're really that we are able to meet and exceed those goals for the district and for our students. And we need somebody to lead that work.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. So in your opinion, you don't feel that this position could be delayed?
I do not, only because there's so much work that needs to be done in terms of curriculum development and the groundwork that needs to be developed to make sure that we are on track to meet our goals in the time that is covered through the strategic plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. LeBron?
Yeah, so there was just a couple of topics that were just mentioned in terms of like pre-K was mentioned and sports and other areas that where there are actual directors already overseeing that work. So I guess the chief academic officer will be overseeing directors. I'm just not a fan of adding even more management to a top-heavy system. But again, I want to also reference back to, even if we're not cut 20%, the budget was passed with a deficit. And so for me, even I pray that we don't get cut 20%. If the state comes through, hallelujah, I'll praise whoever up in the sky, whatever the case may be. However, we still have a deficit. And so I just want to put that out there, because even in the auditor's final findings from the state, he told us we needed to be mindful of every single position that we bring in, the salaries that we're bringing in, and so forth. And so for me, I need to understand, well, who was doing all of this work before this? I just don't understand. We have 2 deputies. What are the roles of the deputies? How is that going to be different from, you know, in the past, we have had deputies that have overseen teaching and learning, and others and that saw all the other community and social emotional stuff. It's still going to be a no for me, but I need to understand, again, that we still have a deficit in a budget. So when we make statements like it was in the budget and it was passed, the budget has a deficit and it was passed with a deficit. And then also who was doing this work before, and are we adding another layer of management to the top?
Commissioner Adams? Oh, Superintendent, did you or your deputy want to respond to that or no?
I'll start it.
Sure.
Certainly, if there's anything that Janelle wants to add. Part of the problem, Commissioner LeBron, is that the work wasn't happening. And, when we look at the fact of where we are academically, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Morris, I think we are the only Big Five that does not have a chief academic officer. That is a typical role in a large school district where they're overseeing the curriculum. We know that it was noted both in the Distinguished Educator Report and then our own audits that we don't have a uniform nor standard curriculum. And we need to have that point person who does that. We need to have somebody who can direct the work of ELA, mathematics, social studies, science, et cetera, in CTE. That is really critically important. And it was very surprising to me coming into the district that we did not have someone to oversee. And, even our suburban counterparts, they have an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. So this is an equivalent. And really, if you just look at where we are and our size, our teaching and learning department, frankly, is underfunded and really is understaffed. But this, again, I know we've had conversations, and I don't take your questions to be offensive. I certainly appreciate that you're pushing and asking us to respond to this. That's your job and in your role as a commissioner. But I stand with all of the things that I said, that this is a role that is sorely missing. And Dr. Morris, I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I completely agree with everything that you said. It's really important that we get this role established, and thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Adams?
So for me, when you start talking about oversight, more oversight, I was thinking that that's what we had Dr. Jallo here for. And so I'm going to refer to Dr. Jallo on this. What is your recommendation on this, Dr. Jallo?
Good evening. My recommendation is that you need a CAO. But I also want to acknowledge something else to Commissioner LeBron. You are very top heavy as a district. So I do think that eventually down the line, there will be a need to assess the positions that you have and the structure of the departments that you have in central office. But at this time, much of the work that should have been happening was happening on the backs of or just a few people. And I do think that you need a strong CAO and a strong curriculum department, because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, this is an education system. So the heart of the district is curriculum instruction, teaching and learning. And right now, that's one of your smallest, most underfunded departments in this district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. I was going to ask the same question, and I do want to throw my little 2 cents in here because I don't see anybody else raising their hands. Yeah, we have a budget deficit, no doubt about it, but we have an academic deficit and have had it for at least a good 30, 40 years. We rank at the lowest and most performance indicators when it comes to our performance in key academic. We are, as Dr. Jallo said, we're an instructional academic entity. Our job is to educate. And, the fact is, when asked rhetorically, who was doing, or seriously, who was doing the work before? Sure, people were working, but it wasn't working very effectively. And if we have to make an investment and have to make that difficult decision about addressing the financial deficit and addressing the academic deficit, these aren't mutually exclusive choices, but in this one, I think the choice is clear. We cannot continue to not have a standardized curriculum. We cannot continue to have proficiency rates in some of our schools. 3 or 4% of our kids are reading at 3s and 4s. Something has to happen from a systemic point of view, a structural point of view, to change that. And our superintendent has laid out what she believes to be the best way forward. And our independent monitor, who is charged with putting together an academic plan, which should come out shortly, as I understand it, she's supportive of that. So I don't know, without denying that we have a budget deficit, I just don't see how we cannot address this academic deficit in this key area. So any other questions or comments on resolution 305? Looking at my chart here, I don't see any. So let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolution 305 indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, it appears that the ayes have it. Am I correct? All right.
You're correct.
Thank you. All right. So listen, we are done with the first portion of our agenda. Commissioner LeBron, the gavel is yours.
Thank you. I just want to also, before we officially start finance conversations, just acknowledge that it is Hispanic Heritage Month and it started today. And many people don't know why it starts September 15th. So I just want to let you guys know why it starts September 15th. So Hispanic Heritage Day starts on September 15th, and to pay homage to the anniversary Independent Day for many Latin American countries, which include Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, who all had their independence today on September 15th. And then interestingly enough, I did find out that September 16th is Mexico's Independence Day, and Chile is the 18th. So happy Hispanic Heritage Day. And with that, we're gonna go right into the finance. So I do need a motion for the minutes from last month.
Motion. Motion.
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in, or did we move them? I forgot if we moved them or we're voting on them. I think we can vote
You're
on
voting.
them now.
Mhm. You're voting.
Yeah, so all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, there we have it. Second item up, I gotta pull up the agenda, I lost it. I touched something on the screen, you guys, so give me 1 second. Find it. There we go. Okay, second item up is the September Finance Resolution Review. So Kalia was very kind enough to send everyone the, hold on, I pressed screen share by accident, you guys. So Kalia sent out to everyone the resolutions that are going to be coming up at the next board business meeting. The finance ones were all emailed to everyone in advance, but this is an opportunity now to review them, so that if we have any questions, we can ask those questions about those resolutions now. So we won't be voting on them tonight, but it's just another opportunity, a little bit more in-depth time to review them, so that when we get to the board business meeting, when we get to this section, we're essentially just voting on them. But if anybody has questions, this is the time. But if you don't have questions now and you want some time to review them, you can do so as well. And administration is asking for you to review and submit your questions in writing before the board business meeting if possible.
I also want to say that we have instituted the executive summary process. So also attached with the resolutions, I sent them out on Friday, as well as several times to you over the past couple of days, are executive summaries for the facilities resolutions, as well as the procurement and supply resolutions. So if you have any questions with regard to those, feel free to also reference those executive summaries as well.
So I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions right now around those particular resolutions.
I do have a question.
Yes, Dr. Jallo.
When exactly were they sent? Because Kaya sent out so many things. We need to figure, well, let me save that. Can you just resend or tell me which one we should be looking at? Because I have more than one and I'm thinking.
Yes,
Sure. So I'm going to share screen. What you
give me the numbers.
Yes, the numbers are not the numbers that will be coming in the final packet, but it does have Finance Cow packet, and that is the preview to Thursday's packet. These are any resolutions that have financial bearing, not including the HR resolutions, but this is the opportunity for us to go through any of those resolutions that will be coming next week, Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to say, Dr. Jallo, Kali and I also talked about the big packet of email that came. And I was like, it's a big packet. We're gonna have to figure out how to meal piece it or something, because it was just a large number of documents. And we know, Kali, you're just doing your job because all this information has to come. But it was a very large email to go through. So that's why I also mentioned that if folks did not have an opportunity or have questions now, an opportunity to review beforehand, that particular packet, you are more than welcome to review it before the next board business meeting, but they are asking to submit questions if possible in advance, so that the goal is to get through actual resolutions a little bit faster in our board business meetings. So I don't see anybody's hands up with questions, so I'm going to move on to the next portion, which is I'm turning it over to our CFO, Ms. Pierce.
Good evening, superintendents, President White, and commissioners, and our RCSD community. It's an honor to be here before you this evening. I realize the hour is late and we have much to accomplish. So what I'm going to try and do is get through the cover memo as quickly as possible and then move into the specific financial spreadsheets, and we can go from there. So as we move down through, we will go through the cash flow projections in depth. So if we move down to revenue summary, in that section, what you're going to see is that we've started to make some of those adjustments we've been talking about in the months past. Areas where we have found our information within the budget to be a little bit off from the actual figures. So within this section, you're going to see the $3 million reduction in transportation aid. You're going to see the reduction in our E-rate program of $173,000 approximately. You will see a positive variance of $1.3 million, and that was for the premium that we received on the RAN. So that's income coming into the district, which is always nice. You will also find, again, the explanation of the CARES funding and how it was handled within the revenue portion of our budget. And what I'd like to point out here is that the amount of the equitable share has been reduced from $619,000 down to $595,000. The reason for that reduction is that there has been a reduction in the overall enrollment in 9 non-public schools that are within our district area. And so that's good news. As most of you have probably heard, there is legislation underway with regard to the equitable share. And what we're saying right now is that we are continuing to recognize the equitable share and account for it until we are told that that requirement is no longer in place. On the next page, you're going to see where we received additional grant funds that we had not anticipated. That had our special aid fund by $423,000. And we are beginning to recognize the deficit within our food service program. And at this point in time, we're currently looking at a $3 million deficit for the year. As we move down through, again, the appropriations, we'll go through those more thoroughly with the reports as we will with the capital summary. If I could draw your attention now, please, to page 2 of 20. We're going to jump right into our cash flow. And it's important to note that this particular cash flow is going to be reflecting, and it'll be the next page down, Kalia, thank you. It's going to reflect all of our funds within our district. And that's very important to keep in mind because it's accumulation of all of those funds. And so as we move through, you're going to see a considerable, what appears to be an improvement over last year at this time. Again, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that we are now recognizing the $85.6 million RAN, which is in the upper portion of the cash flow. You'll see it there underneath the RAN. What I'd like to also point out is that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later within our appropriations, but in order to attain a better pricing, if you will, a refinancing of our bands,
we actually had to make an additional principal payment. And so you're going to see a considerable jump year over year within our debt payment line. And that's down in the payout portion or the distribution portion, the expense portion. And so you'll see a significant increase there of up to 17.6 million, which is up over the 9.7 million last year at the same time. What has occurred with that is that in order to qualify for the refinancing of the ban, we needed to make that payment in order to stay in alignment with the MOE with the city. So if you move through the actual cash flow underneath the month of February, you're going to see a significant reduction year over year from last year to this year in that line item. And we will continue to watch. It's up a little bit higher there, Callie, it's 5 million, and it was 11.9 million last year. So that's where we're going to see the benefit of that coming through. I draw your attention, though, please, to the very last column, the June payment. And within that, the June projection, and what you're going to see is a negative $2.8 million projection. And again, this is for all aggregate funds. So we can clearly say that our challenges continue. That's not news to anyone, but we will absolutely overcome these challenges if we continue to work together as a unified team throughout the district. And again, I keep saying it, but failure is not an option. We're keeping our children in mind, and they are dependent upon us. When you move to the actual revenue summary document, which is page 3 of 20, all you're going to see here is spelled out in a numeric format, exactly what I had stated to you in the cover sheet within the cover memo, I should say, and what was spelled out there for you in those changes within the revenue projections. So we can then move over to page 5 of 20. And if I'm going too fast, you can slow me down. I just know that we have a lot to accomplish, and I'm happy to take your questions anytime throughout this presentation. So on page 5 of 20, again, focusing on those items that stand out as what could appear to be abnormal, or we have recognized them as being a blip. What you're going to see is that underneath contract transportation, you actually have a credit there of $149,000. And I'm saying it's a credit because anytime that you have a negative expenditure, that's actually a positive, that equals a credit. And that was a timing issue. Nothing more than that. That'll clear out next month. The area or the item that raised a little bit concern for me again was down in the next section underneath the debt service. That's where we're actually seeing a negative as an available balance within our bond anticipation note code. And that is exactly the representation of the additional payment of principal that was unanticipated. Again, that will be made up in the form of lower interest payments. So we're going to keep an eye on here. Obviously, a negative in the available balance column is not a positive. So again, that is an absolute negative, and we will continue to watch that progress throughout the course of the year. On the next page, you do have a negative again for rental. Again, this is just a method of accounting. You have 168,000, and that is for the Hart Street. And Callie, I thank you for pointing out the one up above of $5,272. Again, that is another credit within an expenditure column. So again, not concerned about credits coming in. That's to our positive. And with Hart Street and the rental information there, the way that is displayed has been a district trend. It's within the history. However, I'd like to see us change that accounting methodology as we move forward, and we shall do so. On the next page, page 7 of 20, again, you're going to see a large negative, and that is, again, nothing more than
interdepartmental credits. We will be taking a look at that as time progresses here in our next budget season. And again, another accounting method that we would like to see changed. The very last thing that I'd like to bring your attention to on that same page is underneath the appropriation for deficit reduction. You may recall that we started the year with $8 million in that code. And as we have been finding money that we can say where programs or expenditures have actually come in under budget thus far this year, we are moving money into that code and accumulating it there to keep it separate and so that we can measure it. This does not include salaries, so I just want to point that out. This is not salary related in this particular case. So that takes us through our appropriations. I would like to now move to, if you will, you can move on to the capital accounts, the H fund and the K fund. I don't know if you have any questions there. There's not a great deal of movement within those funds at this point in time. There's a great deal of activity, but there's just not a lot of movement within the funds, which is not a bad thing. I'd like to see that remaining stable at this point in time. Does anyone have any questions with regard to the finances? Happy to entertain those.
I don't see anyone's hands raised, Carleen.
Okay. If anything comes up later, you know how to reach me. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. I find comfort in you finding comfort in knowing that you have a solid answer. And so just please, anytime, reach out to me that you feel the need to. So I think we're up on our next slide there, Kalia. Appreciate it.
1 second. Did you want to share another item, or did we want to talk about the activity funds report before going into the presentation?
Whatever works with your agenda is fine for me. So if you would like to
do that, the student activities on there, Carleen, next.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I don't know if Carleen, you're going to pull that up and we can go over that one as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just going to share real quick.
Okay, and while she's pulling it up, just want to say that pretty much at the time that the student activities funds really get moving for the year was about the time that COVID hit. So what you're going to see primarily is a lot of shifting, just to kind of summarize it, from one senior class moving into the next senior class. You'll see where if monies were earned, you're going to see that shift and that movement, but again, not a lot of activity for a district in our size. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain those the best that I can, and willing to do so. Any questions? Okay, great.
Okay, so we just need a motion to move to the business meeting.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think we're not moving to the business meeting. What do you mean, Kalia?
To vote. So we're moving them to the business meetings where they can be.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Motion to advance the report to the full board.
Second.
Favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, Carleen, I think the next item after that is the other report that you were going to do.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay. So thank you, Kalia, for handling all of the slides and everything for us. You're absolutely wonderful for doing that. So what we'll do is we'll get started right away here. As promised, in meetings past, you had asked that we bring forward the current state of financial affairs. So we'll pick right up with that on slide number 2.
And what we're going to do each month, that as we were asked, was to bring the current state of financial affairs forward to you again, and to just give you updates on those numbers. So could we go to slide number 2, Kalia?
One second. I think something has switched with my sharing ability. Give me 1 second.
Callie, if it's easier for you too, I can take my camera off, my video off, if it's somehow causing a problem. That could be.
I think it's.
Are you seeing it correctly now?
I am seeing it fine. Thank you. I hope
Wonderful.
everyone else is as well. The only update that we really have, or updates I should say on this slide, is that keeping a very close eye on food service, and Mike Schmidt and Deli have absolutely done a wonderful job of keeping us in the loop with regard to food service and the projections there. We are, as I stated earlier, estimating a deficit of $3 million. In listening to other districts that have opened across the nation, some of those districts, schools are actually seeing a reduction in their food service program by 91%. So I'm not saying that that's what we're going to see here, but we could move anywhere from 3 million to 6 million. 6 million was at the high end, that should we not have experienced any furloughs or layoffs, 6 million easily would have been recognized. We do see down there the CARES funding. That was the adjustment I mentioned earlier, where we had moved from 619,000 to 595,000. So again, that's a positive movement in our favor. Severance pay did tick up a little bit by approximately 48,000, and we are working with that. On the next slide, we really don't have a great deal to update you on this slide either. Things are pretty much status quo. We're hoping to finalize the BOCES expenditure the next few weeks here. We'll get that a more solid number for you. And we are continuing just to keep an eye on all of these other expenditures that we have raised to you in the past. Callie, my presentation isn't showing again. Do you have it?
Yes, yeah, I'm trying to fix it. Give me 1 second, Carly, and I'm so sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. The next section that we will go into is the short-term action plan and our accomplishments and offsetting the expenditures that we have recognized. So we'll bring that right up.
Marisol is going to switch over the sharing. I think something is going wrong here. So just give us 1 second. There we go.
Okay, it's great. So again, these are things that have already been put in place to help offset some of those expenditures that have been recognized in the last couple of meetings. All out-of-town travel has ceased. And again, I won't go down through and read these for you. We've talked about them in the past. One of the items I would like to point out on this slide is that with regard to the hiring freeze, again, if there are essential positions, it's up to us to take those positions into the superintendent to request her approval. So even though I'm saying it's a hiring freeze, it is a freeze of sorts, but the positions could move forward with the approval of the superintendent. We are continuing to review all transactions within Concur and within PeopleSoft, and I know that you had listened to the report earlier tonight with P-card being suspended, but as I am reviewing those Concur transactions, it's easy to see where those transactions tied back into the areas that we have been cited for in years past with regard to overages within our budget. So it is the right movement there and keeping a track of those expenditures and how we're processing them, and we will make recommendations moving forward in time on how we will handle certain transactions. On the next slide,
We have a cease in overtime. And again, here too, there will be exceptions. There needs to be exceptions at times. And I'm speaking with Mike Schmidt, Tom Casa, and Joe Griffin. We have the need at times where buildings will be have to be cleaned for disinfectant reasons. And of course, that may fall into an overtime category. All we are asking is that each case be reviewed by those presenting the request, and then it will come into the superintendent or myself for approval, and we'll make a decision and move on those. Everything else for this particular side has been discussed in the past and has been enacted. The next slide. Again, heavy scrutiny with expenditures moving through PeopleSoft, and we have placed a suspension on all field trips at this point in time. Okay, and turning it over at this point to Commissioner LeBron.
So I just want to remind folks that we have a PD that is scheduled for September 29th for the Finance Committee. And we're still trying to finalize the full schedule. So hopefully by the 29th, we should be able to share the entire schedule for the next coming months. For the finance, based on the results from the survey that we submitted, Kali and myself have not had an opportunity to meet one-on-one, but we are forcing time for ourselves this week to do that so that we can get through the agenda for the 29th, as well as the next couple of months. And again, based on the survey that Kali has sent out to the full board. So that's what I have for that.
Okay. So with regard to our professional development for this evening, folks may be asking, why do we need both a budget and a multi-year plan? And so we thought we'd talk a little bit about that tonight. On the left side of the screen with that arrow pointing out to the left, when we think about a budget, and we've worked with our budgets in the past, we are absolutely spelling out code by code, line by line of the expenditures as we best know them to be for the coming fiscal year, as we all know. And through this many, many times, and that is the process. With regard to the multi-year plan on the right-hand side of the screen, this is something that is based on historical trend analysis as well as on trends that we can anticipate moving forward. So again, it's a projection. It's taking what we have learned from history, what we've experienced in history, working off of that and building it into the future. It has a much broader base, and it also will be much more volatile than the actual budget itself. And year after year, it will need to be adjusted, or as conditions change and updates are known, the multi-year plan is adjusted accordingly. It's dynamic, it is forever live, and we keep moving with it as changes occur. So on the next slide, we have, again, just a further definition. Many people refer to a multi-year fiscal plan or financial plan as a long-range plan. We talk about it in terms of, again, technical analysis of our history, and we are applying that history so we can plan for our future. There are many voices that come together in a collaborative setting so that we can talk through the plan. And it involves a great deal of input from all levels of employees to become involved with this plan. And we use the strategic plan of the district as a guiding force. Most importantly, it is the anchor in achieving financial stability, and it's absolutely a direction in which we need to move. I've just listed some benefits here of the multi-year plan, and I cannot take credit, I have to say, for these slides. I have pulled information off of ASBO, and I have also pulled information from Forecast 5, who's another planning entity who works. I thank them for their information. But again, when you're looking at the benefits at the top, it helps us to identify those trends, the challenges and opportunities. And then it allows us to develop our strategies so we can absolutely be more precise in what we need to target in the years to come. We will use it as our
guiding force again, if you will, in the budget development, and we'll see how that all comes together. So these are just the areas or the factors that influence the plan. If you take a look here, it's a little bit of everything. It's our district culture, our policies, most importantly, our strategic plan, and again, the fiscal environment, all will have influence. I like to think of the long-range financial plan as a cyclical plan in nature. And once you fall into the rhythm of the plan, it becomes very easy to keep up with it, and it flows very nicely and dovetails right into the entire budget process, the budget planning process. So here we are in the time period of August to October, and we're doing exactly this. We are working to develop our plan for the first time, and we're taking what we have known and learned from 1920, the school year 1920, and from the years past, and starting to plot that information out. As you move into the November, December timeframe, we will be sharing, the superintendent will be sharing the plan and use it as the guiding process for our budget. As we have stated in meetings past, we will absolutely be starting the budget season earlier this year so that we can think about our direction and how we are going to finance the expenditures within our district and what revenue sources we will need to tap into to accomplish those objectives. Moving down through, you'll see that the state aid, as we all know, comes in, the projections come in January, so that's added to the plan as an update. And we have to adjust our expenditures then according to what the state aid plan the state aid projections are showing us. In the February-March timeframe, this is where we will bring to you various scenarios, budget scenarios to work from. And then we will make a decision and go forward with that budget. We'll take that budget to the board for their vote, as well as out to the city as you continue around the flow. Back in July again, once we have received the city approval, in July, it pretty much starts all over again. And again, once we have worked with this for a while, it just becomes an easy rhythm. It becomes a part of who we are. It comes second nature, and it'll just continue as we move forward. So I will turn it over now to Dr. Jallo.
Thank you. I have a document that is supposed to be shared. Good evening, everyone, once again. If you can't find that document, I think I can talk it through. Oh, okay. So this is a document that is a working document that I'm using as I start to build the frame for the financial plan. I have a similar document for the academic plan, but this one is for the finance plan. And so this is an opportunity for me to keep in mind as we begin writing, or as I begin writing my part, is how the monitor's finance plan aligns with the DE recommendations. And also, I also wanted to use the frame from the Council of Greater City Schools. Back in 2019, they did a report on member districts around finance and operations. So I'm using that as a frame to understand what are the right things to ask, who are the right people to talk to, how do we measure up against other urban districts. And in this major report that they did, that I encourage you to read if you so have the desire to do so, this report is good because it has all the member districts. Unfortunately, where it fails is our district was a part of the report in the beginning, the first year of the study, and then for some reason our data does not appear in the subsequent years. But still, it's beneficial because we can use some of those metrics to see where we fall in comparison to other urban districts, to give us some sense of where we stand in terms of our operations as it relates to finance. This does not include the action plan that principle President White refers to often. But I wanted to just have a short version to have an understanding of things that have already taken place or have already been accomplished, and make sure that that's noted in the monitor's plan as well. Many of the things in the plan, at least as recommendations go, have already been addressed, and many have already been accomplished. You already have a finance committee of the whole. You already evaluate your performance after meetings. So many of the things that you promised to do are already in there, and that represents the far right-hand side. On the left-hand side are the headings that are in the monitor's report. We have an opportunity to change the frame, but the headings are what they are. The first one is governance and leadership, governance and programmatic decision-making. And then they just have a couple of guiding questions just to guide the writer in terms of, these are some things you might look into. The next one is budget development, and that's very important for the development of the plan, because we haven't sat down and talked about it officially, but we all seem to be saying the same thing. We have to start the budget sooner, and we want to develop the budgets maybe in a slightly different format than they have been done in the past. We've thrown around ideas with student-weighted budgets. We've thrown around the idea of zero-based budgets. I met with a great group of principals today, and they had some very interesting ideas about, some levels of autonomy around how their money is spent and being treated as CEOs of their buildings. And those have implications, those kind of ideas have implications for how we might build a budget. So as we talk to principals and talk to assistant principals and those closest to having the greatest impact on the budget, getting their input on this particular section of the plan will be critical. The next one is cash flow management, and that's pretty to the point. You had a presentation tonight, as you have every month, on this area. But we want to be able to have an idea of what our cash flow, so we can have an understanding how to build out a plan over 5 years. Same is true for revenue outlook, and the same is true for expenditure outlook. What this plan doesn't specifically state, but is at the core of the plan, is your enrollment numbers. And having accurate enrollment numbers, so you can make accurate enrollment projections, will be critical as a foundation to really both plans, both financial and academic. So we have to do a 5-year projection on revenue and a 5-year projection on expenditure, with the idea that we may come back from year to year and have to make adjustments as we look to 5 years. Can you come down a little further, please? Another heading is, of course, human capital needs, policies, and trends. And that's very important because most of our budget, I think about 80% or more, is dedicated to staffing and fulfilling those needs. Other major expenditures are enrollment trends. This is very important. Right now, I had a meeting actually earlier today about enrollment trends. And quite frankly, we can do the enrollment trends mathematically. That's not the problem. The problem is then going back to those numbers and making the appropriate adjustments based on things we know, maybe what's happening with charter schools, or maybe where there is going to be housing developments, or whether there is going to be a decline in city residencies and so forth and so on. Those things have to be factored into just a pure number statistical projection of enrollment. So we'll do that. Long-term planning, indebtedness, that's important for us as well, because we have those debts out there. And so we have to not only look at paying off the principal, but we have to look at very carefully our interest rates and when we're being asked to pay these things back, because then it goes back to the other heading around cash flow. It's not like a mortgage where it's just every month. Some have different payment arrangements. So that has to be taken into account and recorded in the plan. Organizational structure and internal operational efficiencies. That is also important, the number of vacancies, the vacancy rates, and showing all positions. Those are things that might influence your organizational structure. And then finally, facilities and transportation status. We have been known to have disproportionately high transportation costs. And at another meeting today, learned that high transportation costs are more a symptom or another situation. Those situations are decisions we may be making about the times that our schools open, decisions we make about how we enforce those who are eligible to have transportation, how we make decisions about how we feel about transporting special ed children and so forth and so on. So transportation is just an outcome of other decisions that we're making. So we have to look at the organizational structures to see the decisions we're making that may be impacting transportation. And same is true for facilities. That will no doubt be a major part of the plan because one has to examine the utilization of the buildings presently under the oversight of the district and whether in fact you'll have that same complement or want or need that same complement of buildings in 5 years. So those are some of the things. It's a short turnaround on this. And we need to find a way to make sure that, I mean, you can reach me, but we need to hear input if you have any outstanding interests, thoughts, ideas, requests regarding those key areas on the left side under the financial plan that you think should be considered or included in the plan. That's my story for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to also add two key things that I kind of want to uplift for the board to kind of reiterate with this conversation around the multi-year plan and the budget. How, you know, some of the conversations that came up even in our previews meeting is that, you know, we're going to get a new board member soon. And then next year will be an election again. And then 2 years from that, an election again. And we're trying to plan right now with this board for 5 years out, but the dynamics and the makeup of the individuals who are sitting on the board could potentially change. And we know for sure we're going to incorporate one new member, but that it's critical that the district and the board stay focused on this 5-year plan. So even though it's fluid and it can change, the overall fundamental values of that document is critical for us to stay engaged and connected to that original plan so that we can essentially get out of debt and then eventually put ourselves in a more financially stable position so that as ideas come up, we could potentially fund them 5 years from now if we have the money. But right now we're so tight and in debt that, so that was a concern that as new board members come in, that we may change direction and we have to be very concise around sticking with the plan, even though it's fluid. Go ahead, Dr. Jallo.
I want to say, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of my responsibilities once this plan is presented, accepted, or however way it works with SED, I'm not even 100% sure of that, quite frankly. But let's assume that it is an approved plan at some point. One of my responsibilities is to share with the board when they are straying away from the plan and sharing with the state and the commissioner directly when you're straying away from your own plan. So there's going to be adjustments. Hopefully we will be on the other side of this pandemic. And if we're on the other side of this pandemic, I think it would be hard pressed for us to guess what that will look like. And so for that alone, that plan is going to have to be a little fluid because of the times that we're living in. But in terms of the goals that you've set and the strategies that you've prioritized as to how you're going to succeed with reaching those goals should not change, no matter who changes seats, no matter who leaves. That should stay the same.
Yeah, and then the second piece, thank you, Dr. Jallo, and then I'll get to Hans. The other second piece that I really want to uplift is the budget changes. So there's been a lot of conversation in previews and private meetings with myself, Dr. Jallo, and also talking with Dr. Myers just offline around how we do our budget. And I know we've mentioned this publicly and I've talked with Carlene, our CFO, and Kalia. So this is a repetitive conversation for us as groups and in previews, but I just want to bring it to your attention again, that it is a conversation that is ongoing as we figure out some different options for a new budget process, one that is a little clearer, easier for anybody to pick up and understand, but also the dates and how we have historically done our budget, looking at dates to realign that in a different way. So we're not quite there yet, but lots of conversations, meetings, and research and experts that we're all talking to just get feedback and bring all that back as a collective to then make a decision on how we move forward. But just letting you guys know so that you're thinking about it now, and any ideas you may have that you want to either shoot myself an email, or Kalia, or Dr. Jallo, or Dr. Myers, or CFO. All of us are open to hearing anything at this point, because we are looking for a different way that is more transparent and engaging with our community as a whole, with you guys as a whole, but that really aligns to this multi-year plan and the strategic plan, and that it makes sense. So I just want to put that out there. We're not trying to make any changes that people are then confused and saying doesn't make sense.
I would like to address that also.
Yes.
So, because when we have all these conversations, which are good, we tend to think of budgeting and schools, you know, how we're going to do, but central office also under Leslie's leadership has some things to think about. You know, do we want to be centralized? Do we want to be decentralized? Do we want something in the middle, right? Because that is also a piece of it. And I'll give you an example. We had a conversation today about professional development. Well, where are the professional development dollars? Some of them in this department, some of it is in that department, some of it is in, you know, the PD department, some of it's in HR department, some of it's in special ed, some of it's in teaching and learning. So I'm just saying, do you like it that way in multiple places, or do you want it centralized so that people can take from one place versus everybody having their own? Or do you want it decentralized? And it can be decentralized. It's not a good or bad, but I think it's not just how do we do budgeting with schools, it's also how do we do budgeting at central office and departments. So.
Thank you. And Dr. Myers, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Good evening, everyone, again. I just wanted to give a point of information or clarity, because you've heard us say things like the Distinguished Educator Report and then the action items. You've heard the strategic plan mentioned, and tonight you heard the financial plan that Dr. Jallo was working on with us. There's also an academic plan. So what I just want to say to that is we are working very hard to ensure that there's an alignment, and we don't have these four actually different plans or strategies that we're moving forward, and then it has us working in discrepant areas. So you saw what Dr. Jallo presented tonight as far as the alignment to show where it was streamlined across, but you'll find that in our strategic plan. But the guiding document certainly is the Distinguished Educator Report, which I know that our district worked very hard on. The board had its component. That's what starts the plan. And then there are multiple areas that range from teaching and learning to special ed to bilingual education, et cetera. So we will make sure that there is that alignment and that is very clearly articulated so there isn't confusion. And we also want to ensure that we're not spinning our wheels and working on all these different plans. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and that was stated.
Thank you for that clarity, because I know we've had that conversation too. We have to streamline and make sure we're all working in one direction.
Agreed.
Does anybody have any additional questions before we move on? Okay, so I don't know who's going to present this slide, but either Carlene or Dr. Myers.
Just to say what it's going to be on the agenda for our October Finance Committee meeting. And so again, we need to circle back on the 20% budget reductions that have been discussed. And we will also have for you a budget calendar presentation. And again, a realignment of the dates as Commissioner LeBron had stated. So.
Thank you for that. And for the budget calendar, there are some dates, I'm going to throw it out there now for all commissioners. If there's a date you already know between now and next year that for whatever reason does not work for you, if you could let Kalia know, so that as we're having this discussion to finalize a proposal, we could just omit that date now or work around it now, that'd be great. And I think that concludes the entire Finance Committee for tonight. And I'm happy to report on 10 minutes. Oh, what happened?
We do have the cash flow
oh my goodness. I was going to say we're 10 minutes early, but okay. Actually, the cash flow is a very important document. So, and I want to thank our CFO for developing this and putting this together, her and her team. Because if you have never reviewed the cash flow document, it is very lengthy and lots of information and hard to even read on the screen. And so we were just trying to figure out a way to have that information as a visual. And you'll see moving forward, we are going to have some more visuals for people, but you as commissioners, everyone here still has the opportunity to access the actual full detailed cash flow document if you want it. So thank you, Carlene, for this.
No problem. And I have to thank my team, as you stated. I give them the idea and then they come back with the deliverable. So this is Steve Nowak's work, and greatly appreciate his continued efforts. So again, where the other report was our aggregate cash flow, this particular report is the liquid cash balance projection. So the two are very different. This is primarily, and I should say it is reflecting our cash position for accounts payable transactions as well as payroll. So again, we have our concerns. The year is not final. This flow does not yet have built into it the CARES money. So that will change it dramatically once that is incorporated in here, once we know when those funds are coming. And then Steve will build that out. But I draw your attention to the time frame of early to mid-May. At this point in time, the projection is a $45 million cash deficit. And again, this is a liquid cash deficit, which it's serious. But again, we know we have these challenges. This is nothing new for us. We will continue to bring this to you. Steve has used this from the aggregate that we used to show you that was a week by week projection. It was very difficult, as Commissioner LeBron had stated, to view that and put it onto one screen. So this is just plotting it out for you. And again, this is something that we look to include in our packets in the future, and we'll keep an eye on it. And we do continue to need to make adjustments collaboratively and collectively as a district to pull ourselves out of those deficit positions. So that's nothing more than, again, what the projection is at this point in time. And we can move on to the next slide, which is my final slide for this evening. So I'm still working against the clock there, Commissioner LeBron. Okay.
No, you're doing good. I just remembered too that we requested this charter one as well, so folks can see it.
Yeah, so this is the charter school enrollment update as it stands as of 8/1. And so the payment was made as of 9/1. So what we're saying is that as of 8/1, we had 6,308 students enrolled in the charter school, following the typical trend. And as we have, again, that history to build off of, we are currently projecting the final enrollment for the year to be 6,503 students within charter schools. Again, it's only a projection. We know that our break even, and this changed from the other day when I had presented it earlier, but the break even is actually at 6,605 students. That is our magic number, that we have to stay at that number or below it to hit our budgeted dollar amount. And so we will be watching that very closely. But at this point in time, we do have a positive variance within our charter school projection of 1.4 million. So I'm happy to bring that to you this evening. And again, this is something else we will keep our eyes on. Any questions? Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. And I didn't see any hands up. I'm checking again just in case, but I do want to thank you and your team for stepping up. And I know I almost feel it is more work because these are data points that I think are important for the board to know and understand, especially our cash flow. We potentially have a certain time where we may be short with cash and what we may need to do to correct that now. But also the charter piece was something that our state auditors also highlighted in their final findings. That's something that we should be monitoring. So I just thank you guys, you and your team, for stepping up to present those data points and ensuring that the board from this point forward has that as well. So thank you. That concludes the finance team, 7:55 p.m. I'm very proud of everybody and myself for staying on time and track. And I'm going to turn the gavel over to President White.
Chairperson LeBron, we appreciate your work in getting it done on time and having the agenda pretty comprehensive. We covered a lot of stuff. I also, on behalf of the board, want to thank Carlene and Shelley. We can clearly see a long-term cohesive financial plan coming together, and that's good news. My colleagues know I always talk about good news. We need to hear that and see that as much as possible. And I just think the be able to visualize and seeing the plan coming together. Now, executing is another thing. And I think you said, Shelley, you're going to be there to make sure that we keep our eye on the prize once the plan is approved. But
President White,
yes,
we're not using the word executing in our district. We're saying implementing.
Oh, implementing. Very well, very well. Us lawyers try to use words like executing. You're right. Next time I do that, you remind me.
Will do.
I'm a school board hat on, not my lawyer hat on. But now that we see that, while we know that there may be challenges with implementing, but just to see the plan coming into form is good news. Leslie, again, on behalf of the board, thank you for your efforts at synthesizing your strategic plan with and I'm being very careful about my words here, synthesizing your strategic plan with the Board of Education's action plan, which was done in response to the Distinguished Educators Report. Yes. So as I think as a number of people observed, we got it all covered. Shelley is making sure that we cover the Distinguished Educators recommendations, and the Council for Great City Schools, which is a great resource that we have been a member of for many years. But again, you are looking at your strategic plan and its development and making sure that everything that the board did in response to the recommendations and that resulted in the action steps is fully integrated. So we appreciate that work. All right, folks. There's one thing that we neglected to do back in the day, in the earlier part of our agenda, which was to approve the claims audit report, our new claims audit report. So I need a motion to approve that claims audit report that we received. Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Is there a second? Come on, guys. Somebody wants to go home.
Ricardo Adams, Commissioner Adams motion.
Commissioner Adams said second. So all those in favor of approving the claims audit report as presented by our claims audit firm, indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? I think the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, did I forget anything? Are we now entitled to a motion to adjourn?
What about our?
Oh, you're Commissioner Powell. You're going to be the official survey reminder. That's going to be, that'll create a special role for you. So Commissioner Powell once again reminds me that we have to do our survey before we adjourn. So we'll do that. For those folks looking on, as part of our actions plan, we said we were going to take a survey after every meeting. And that's what you see us doing right now on our screens, just to evaluate how we thought we did in our meeting.
All right, I'm done. Good night, everybody.
We need a motion to adjourn first.
Yeah.
We usually have to wait until we have 100% attendance in the survey, right?
Yep.
I just
So
need one more.
It's me. I was talking at the beginning and I didn't get started. Give me a few more seconds, folks, and I'll be almost done. Give me one more second. Done.
Dr. Myers-Small, you had something to say about the word execute. I have an issue with this new term that's being used of servicing our kids instead of serving our kids. There's something about the innuendo of servicing that just bugs the crap out of me.
Okay. Well, Leslie, you may have to come up with a different word. Okay.
I like the old way, just serving, you know. We are servants, and as a district, we serve the public.
Sounds good. Commissioner Powell, on that note, do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Powell, second by Commissioner Adams. All those in favor indicate by saying good night. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.